Welcome into another edition of Mavs Latest. I'm Josyah Howard, and before we get things started here, please subscribe down below. Please leave any comments as I'm going through today because here on Mavs Latest, it's every day, all things Dallas Mavericks with me, Josyah Howard. But let's start here because we got a nugget about Cooper Flag, and he indeed, in fact, wanted to play in that third Summer League game that he was shut down for, and that was the plan regardless. But a Mavs executive caught up with Spot Track's Keith Smith, and his interest in playing in that third game was absolutely real. And through Keith Smith, the executive tells the story that Cooper Flag obviously shot like he says crap in his first game in Las Vegas. The second game he dominated. The Mavericks had a plan to play Cooper Flag 2 games regardless, but Cooper Flag came up to the executives. He came up to the coaching staff and asked to play a third game, and he was um, the response was laughter from the executives and coaching staff, and they responded with, "No, you're good." And he responded with, "I just don't want people to think that the good game, was a fluke." And again, all the executives could do is laugh, but it shows how much he wants to be great. And I agree with all that. I'm not surprised Cooper Flag wanted to play in that third game to prove himself, but again, he has nothing to prove. And to be honest, I think the front office kind of deserves a little bit of credit for saving him from himself. It's the summer league. It doesn't really matter. You're the number one overall pick. You don't really have anything to prove, and you're not going to be able to prove it in summer league regardless. You played your very first game was a little shaky. It's your first game. You had a little nerves. You're a little inefficient. Who cares? It's summer league. You had a better game the second game. You showed flashes of why you're the number one pick in the second game. You had nothing to prove, and honestly, summer league doesn't prove any of that anyway. So, to be honest, I love that he wanted to play in the third game. I love that he asked to play in the third game. But I really love that the Mavericks said, "Nah, playa, you good. You ain't playing another one. You good. But we love your initiative. Uh, we love that mindset from you. But you could take a seat right on next to us." But yeah, I do want to at least give a little bit of credit again for them agreeing to say, "Yeah, Coop, you got to take a seat." But speaking of the Mavs executives, CBS Sports, and specifically Sam Quinn of CBS Sports, recently released a ranking of NBA front offices, and that included the Dallas Mavericks landing at 26th in the league, only behind the Sun. The only teams behind them are the Suns, the Kings, the Bulls, and the Pelicans. Obviously, not the best group to be a part of. Um, some reasoning that Sam Quinn uses is that you don't get credit for getting Cooper Flag. It was obviously luck that you got the first overall pick, which I agree with. It was luck. You can't give Nico or the front office credit for that. Um, he then goes to kind of say they rushed Anthony Davis back, and you kind of have to get knocked for rushing him back, with obviously knowing his medical history going into it, which is another nugget I kind of agree with. I felt like Anthony Davis was pressured to get back to kind of silence the noise of the fallout of the Luka trade, and that's not Anthony Davis's fault. He didn't ask for any of this. Um, Another point he kind of brings up is the flukiness of getting the number one pick, right? He says, Sam Quinn, that they should have decided to tank at some point last year and go for a bad pick, but they decided to hang around and be in the play-in, and that luckily got them the first pick. But that's not, he doesn't necessarily agree with, just because it resulted in the first pick doesn't mean the way they did it was the correct way, and you can't get credit for being lucky. And parts of that are true. I definitely think parts of that are true, but you got to give the Mavs front office a little bit of credit for some of the roster moves they do have on the team. They did take a gamble on Kyrie Irving. People forget that that signing at the time was a gamble, and it worked out for them. They did have an appearance in the finals. Um, the Luka trade's obviously probably the biggest gamble in NBA history. I don't necessarily think that one's going to work out for the Mavericks, but it turned out that they got the first overall pick, so it doesn't necessarily hurt their future as much as fans might have thought it did. But you can't necessarily say it's not lucky. Um, Again, to at least give the front office a little credit, again, you bring in Kyrie, you traded for PJ Washington, who was on a terrible team in Charlotte, but proved to be a pretty nice rotational piece when he played games that mattered. And you could say the same exact thing for Daniel Gafford coming from a team like Washington. So, again, Mavericks made little moves that popped for them, and you got to give them a little bit of credit for that. Again, they brought up Quinn brings up the fact that they lost out on Quinton Grimes, and yeah, he might have developed to be a good player for the Mavericks, but he got opportunity in Philadelphia to show off his talents. He's not going to get similar opportunity that he got in Philly last year with how many injuries they had, to where he would be able to showcase what he showcased in Philly. He wouldn't have been able to do that in Dallas. So I think it's a little bit of a stretch to criticize losing Quentin Grimes. But at the end of the day, I think 26th a little harsh. I think it's a little bit bold due to the Luka trade. I think that a lot of that weighs into it. Um, but bottom 10, I can't heavily criticize that. If somebody said 20, 21, 22, I can't heavily criticize that. They have some more work to do in the eyes of not just Mavs fans, but NBA fans to garner favor or benefit light on what they've been doing as a front office. So, ranked at 26, a little harsh, but I don't hate bottom 10 right now. I just, more things need to get done to repair the ugliness of that Luka trade. So, Sam Quinn ranking the Mavericks 26th best, I guess, 26th best, or bottom five, or yeah, bottom five front office in the NBA. But one question that's been hovering the Dallas Mavericks is who is going to get that last roster spot, the last two-way deal on the team, and might look like Maxwell Lewis, a former Laker on the on the Mavericks Summer League team this go around. Um, Finishing out his final two Summer League games, averaging 20 points on 56% from the field and 58 from three in his final two Summer League games. So finishing strong, and obviously has the connection with former Laker Anthony Davis, D'Angelo Russell, and Max Christie, and a lot of the coaching staff, also part of that Laker team. Obviously, head coach Jason Kidd, um, new assistants in Frank Vogel and Mike Penberthy, also a part of those Lakers teams. Phil Handy and player development, also on that Lakers team. So, with the strong performance and the comfortability with that coaching staff, do you now take that final two-way deal and bring in someone that knows your program? I'm not sure a wing is necessarily needed with that last two-way spot. I think with the injury issues of the center position and just being prepared for it, I think that last two-way deal needs to be a big, but it's not as clear cut at that position in terms of what the Mavericks have from at least their summer league depth. I don't know in terms of their legends roster what they got with centers, but it feels like Maxwell Lewis makes the most sense in getting this last roster spot. So we'll obviously keep everyone up to date with the latest with this last roster spot. But to me, it feels like Maxwell Lewis getting this last roster spot makes the most sense and what's going to actually happen. But I want to wrap things up with a little Mavs chatter. And Kyrie Irving was back on his stream and he brought up an interesting thought about how financials amongst, you know, athletes and CEOs and Fortune 500 companies are made publicized. And he said, I find it interesting that, of course, people know that how much CEOs make and how much that puts a target on someone's life. And you look at that and how much information at some point and how is that comfortable for me? If you know exactly how I'm making, and there's just an awkwardness that is where I'm existing within our society. Um, and obviously, that's a problem you got to deal with when you're somebody that makes the type of money that Kyrie makes and the type of celebrity that comes with being a professional athlete. And unfortunately, that's a problem that's, or not even, I don't even necessarily view it as a problem, but the it's something about your profession that's not going anywhere. And unfortunately, it's just when you make that type of money, that I don't want to say there's consequences to it, but there's things you have to deal with when you make that type of money. And obviously, I can't relate to any of that, but it's interesting for Kyrie to at least be very open and honest about a pretty kind of complex issue in his eyes. And I at least can appreciate somebody being open about that and opening up the discussion around it. But again, it's not going anywhere, and I do feel bad that people with that type of money can't necessarily live the type of normal life that you want to live. But when you're making millions, that's just what comes with it. So again, I feel bad, but it is what it is. So this has been another Mavs Latest. I'm Josyah Howard. Please subscribe. Please leave any comments down below. And let's get it, y'all.